The ground beneath the NRL is trembling, but it is not from a stadium-sized tackle or a crowd's thunderous roar. It is the sound of a 130-kilogram giant walking away from the game he was built to dominate. Nelson Asofa-Solomona, the man they call Big Nas, has officially hung up the boots to step into the boxing ring, and his parting words have sent a chill through the spine of the sport. He believes the very foundation of rugby league is crumbling, stating bluntly that the game is losing its bones. This isn't just about a player seeking a new paycheck, it is a terrifying prophecy from a man who feels he has become an endangered species in a world that once worshipped his size. While the league celebrates its new era of speed and endurance, the most intimidating enforcer of the modern era is warning us that the soul of the contest is being surgically removed. The shock isn't that he left, but the reason why. He believes a player of his stature literally cannot survive in the current system. Subscribe to all sports updates. Nelson's departure from the Melbourne Storm wasn't a standard contract dispute, it was a slow-motion divorce from a sport that he feels stopped loving him back. For over a decade, Asofa-Solomona was the nuclear option in Craig Bellamy's arsenal, a 6'7" wrecking ball that defied the laws of physics every time he hit the line. However, the game's frantic quest for a faster product has inadvertently created a hostile environment for the behemoths who once defined the forward battle. Nelson looks at the modern landscape and sees a graveyard of the giants, where the rulebook has been weaponized against the massive frames that used to provide the game's gladiatorial theater. He speaks of missing 2 consecutive grand finals due to suspensions for what he describes as accidents, moments where his sheer height made a legal tackle a mathematical impossibility. This sense of powerlessness, the feeling that his own DNA was a liability, is what finally broke his spirit and pushed him toward the squared circle. The phrase losing its bones suggests a sport that is becoming hollow, a skeletal structure with the marrow sucked out in favor of a polished, television-friendly aesthetic. Asofa-Solomona's fear is that by phasing out the 130-kilogram middle forward, the NRL is trading its unique identity for a standardized brand of high-speed cardio. He argues that the grit and the raw, intimidating presence of the big man are what gave the game its primitive appeal, its bones. Without them, it risks becoming a contest of who can run the fastest for the longest, rather than who can withstand the most punishment in the trenches. The enforcer-turned-boxer is mourning the loss of the genuine collision, replaced by a version of the game where every impact is scrutinized by a video referee with a microscope. For Nelson, boxing represents a return to the truth, a sport that still has its bones because the violence is the point, not a byproduct to be legislated away. Check out all sports updates. When Nelson reflects on those missed grand finals, you can hear the haunting resonance of a man who feels cheated by progress. Imagine standing at the peak of your powers, prepared to lead your brothers into the biggest battle of the year, only to be told you are too big to play. The mental toll of those suspensions created a rift that no amount of loyalty to the Storm could bridge. He began to feel like a prisoner of his own anatomy, a gladiator being told his sword was too heavy for the modern arena. This narrative of the extinct enforcer is a compelling tragedy because it mirrors the evolution of so many contact sports moving toward safety at the expense of spectacle. Nelson's move to boxing is a defiant act of rebel lion against a system that tried to shrink him. In the ring, his height is a gift, not a curse, his power is a celebrated asset, not a reason for a 4-week stint on the sidelines. The boxing world is salivating at the prospect of a 200-centimeter monster with the footwork of a league star, but the NRL should be terrified of what his exit represents. If the league's most recognizable giants continue to find the environment uninhabitable, we will soon be left with a roster of clones, all built for the same high-intensity shuttle runs. Asofa-Solomona points out that the rosters are already starting to look different, populated by shorter, stockier athletes who can bounce back from the 40-20s and the 6 again calls. He warns that the diversity of body types is what made rugby league the greatest game of all, and by losing that, we are losing the very thing that made it relatable to every person in the stands. The big kids who used to see Nelson as a hero now see a path that ends in a judiciary hearing rather than a trophy presentation. This is the dark side of the speed revolution, where the legends of tomorrow are being discouraged before they even debut. All Sports Updates is your home for the latest. The transition from the footy field to the boxing ring is a well-trodden path, but Nelson's journey feels significantly more ideological than those who came before him. Unlike others who box for a hobby or a quick payday, Asofa-Solomona is searching for the gladiatorial essence he believes has evaporated from the NRL. He talks about the warfare mindset, the individual responsibility, and the raw honesty of a one-on-one fight where there is no whistle to save you from a collision. In the ring, there are no careless high shots that result in a month of unemployment, there is only the brutal reality of the exchange. This craving for a more primal contest is a scathing indictment of where the NRL stands in 2026. It suggests that for some of its most storied warriors, the game has become too clinical, too managed, and too far removed from the dirt and the blood of its origins. Hazepantelis and other officials have often debated the impact of rule changes, but hearing it from a man who lived the transition is a different level of evidence. Nelson's testimony is a primary source from the front lines of a changing sport. He describes feeling like a chore to turn up to training, not because he was lazy, but because he was training for a version of the game that no longer existed. The joy was replaced by a constant, nagging anxiety that his next tackle might be his last for the season. This psychological weight is what ultimately led to the mutual termination of his contract with Melbourne. The Storm knew they couldn't keep a caged lion who no longer believed in the bars of the cage. His departure is a victory for his personal freedom but a massive loss for the diversity of the NRL's talent pool. The future of the big man in rugby league is now an open question that the administration must answer before more stars follow Nelson out the door. If the bones of the game are indeed being lost, the structure will eventually collapse under the weight of its own uniformity. We are watching a live experiment in how much a sport can change before it becomes unrecognizable to its founding spirit. Nelson Asofa-Solomona is just the first major casualty of this identity crisis, a warning shot fired from the boxing gym to the boardroom. He hasn't just changed sports, he has ignited a debate about the soul of the NRL that will likely outlast his fighting career. The Giants are watching, and they are wondering if there is still a place for them in a game that seems increasingly obsessed with the small and the swift. As Nelson prepares to trade the headgear for the gloves, the rugby league community is left to contemplate a future without its most terrifying physical presence. The stadium lights will still shine, and the games will still be fast, but a certain shadow will be missing from the defensive line. Big Nas is moving on to a world where his size is his greatest weapon, leaving behind a sport that he fears has become too afraid of its own power. Whether he becomes a heavyweight champion or just another crossover curiosity, his message has already landed like a knockout blow. The game is changing, the bones are thinning, and the era of the true enforcer may have just walked into the sunset. The question remains, once the Giants are gone, who will be left to hold up the sky? Don't forget to like and subscribe to all sports updates. Would you like me to dive deeper into the specific NRL rule changes that Nelson claims are phasing out the big men? This video provides the direct context of Nelson Asofa-Solomona's transition to boxing and his debut fight against Jeremy Latimore, highlighting the career shift discussed in the script.